with 2020. But for those of you who can cast your mind back a little bit further, Australia was subjected to serious bushfires at the end of 2019. And one of the things that that really struck us was the immediate offer of support and assistance by a number of the international space agencies, offering a lot of support and data coming through. So I think that that speaks to that common humanity and that common capability that people all, scientists and the international community, rallies together and says, you know, there's a need here, and so we need to support each other. And that has sparked a number of different conversations as well too. As a young agency, we're growing and we're developing our conversations, obviously. But then there's a number of discussions with the US, with Canada, with French research agencies, with DLR, etc., with the Italian Space Agency, in terms of supporting Australian and those agencies' collaboration in exploring how we then tackle some of these more immediate needs that we have and experience to try and deal with some of the situations as we're trying to work through them at the moment, but then also apply that to the longer term solution. So it's a great opportunity in this topic to again for Australia to say thank you to all the support that was offered from the international community at that time.
Thank you very much. Gunther.
Okay, just I think Thomas has already mentioned it, but you know that space climate and Earth observation are an extremely important priority at ESA. Probably one of the strongest programs at ESA, and you know that also our Earth observation director Josef Aschbacher has now been elected as the next DG of ESA. So we will see more priority and stronger cooperation there. And this dashboard that Thomas mentioned is clearly very successful, but it's just the beginning. There's also a very large room for more international collaboration on that.
Very good. Yes. Oh,
Mr. President, may I?
Lost you here, Walter.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to come back to the sentence Thomas Zubuchen brought up, actually, when he showed the connection between climate change and the budget. And your question was whether we can convince our decision makers actually in coming up with missions which actually have some kind of common good. I would actually rephrase it. At least in Germany, the chance and the option that we are able to tackle climate change with space was kind of a door opener to move space from a more scientific, pure scientific area to an area where we have some kind of common good for living on Earth, which actually brought us to the position that we were able to get more funds. Günther just mentioned the Earth observation, the biggest program of ESA, and Germany contributes with the biggest part over there in this program. And not only within ESA, by the way, the data of Copernicus are free for the public, so they can access, they can get these data free of charge. Even if we have bilateral, our primary focus is on missions which are related to tackle some topics in regard of climate change. For example, we work together with our friends in France, with Jean-Yves in a program called, or mission called Mission, to tackle the topic which was also mentioned by Thomas Zubuchen regarding methane. And together with our friends in NASA, JPL, for example, we have a program also with GRACE. All these missions are actually focused to tackle climate change issues. So I would, let's say, turn around your question. It's not something that we have to convince our decision makers. The knowledge, or actually that it came to the that it became public that a lot of topics are only solved or tackled by space opens the door for bigger funds and for acceptance of space, at least in Germany.
Excellent, thank you. Let's see, I've got a call on somebody. Mong-Chi, would you like to enter into this discussion? How's China view all this stuff?
Yes, actually, the Chinese government is paying more attention to the global changes. Just a few years ago, China launched a Tang satellite, which will measure the CO2. We monitor the atmosphere, and in the future, we will also use the small satellite to monitor the atmosphere, the ocean, and the land mass. So that get more attention from the government.
I mean, one of the features that always goes with our science and so forth is since it's a global problem and we're tackling a global problem, and we have cooperation and thing, but data sharing is always one of the key events of this, because that cannot be a nationalist issue if it's going to be successful. What's your assessment, folks? Are we doing a good enough job on that? Because that's how you turn a regional program or into a true, even within cooperations, but into a true global participation in a global event. And so, anyone want to comment? And Anatoly, did I? Yes.
Okay. I would like to support this, Leonard, your idea about data sharing. I wanted to participate in the previous discussion, but this is what I exactly wanted to say. That actually, even if these are national missions which are launched on the national basis by agencies, they complement themselves in coverage. For example, if we look on the natural ecosystems monitoring, it's very important part of the climate change, especially in the boreal zones, which is very typical for Russia. Thanks to this international fleet, we can cover every piece of Russian territory maybe 17 times per day. And even take into account that we have cloudiness more than 60% of time. If this international fleet allows us to get a very comprehensive picture of what is going on in very remote areas. And this balance of these remote areas is very important constituent, for example, for carbon balance. We need not only to count the artificial sources of carbon dioxide, but also natural sinks and sources. And these are mostly very remote places. That's why I think the data sharing on the level which we have now is already very important, crucial part of our success in climate science. But of course, we can, still a lot of things should be done to promote it wider. I mean, that some maybe include some agreement similar to agreement on meteor data, which will allow some data available on more legal, on more solid legal basis. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Let's say, Dr. Samanath, would you care to join in onto this? About India view all these issues?
May I ask some? May I speak something?
Oh yes, by all means.
So that the climate change is a very urgent issue to be solved, and then so that the JAXA has the input several Earth observation satellite on the air trains, and then so that the carbon dioxide measurement system of an precipitation measurement satellite, and then so that the similar to JAXA, ESA and NASA have input the Earth observation satellite on the air trains, and then so that the so in that sense, under the collaboration of the International Space Agency, we are making the Earth observation system, and then so in that sense, And then from the space agency, we can show the some of the solution to the global people in the world. And then that is the, in that sense, the international collaboration is between space agencies is very important to make a solution, even in the climate exchange.
Thank you. And I'm going to take, we'll have one more. Dr. Samanath, did you want to comment, or and which then I think I'll try another question.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to tell you that for the climate change in ISRO, it is an institutional mechanism. We understand that the essential climate variables cannot be measured from space alone. Space, of course, is one way to measure some of those measurements, as Ron said about that. But then we created an institutional mechanism in India where all the research laboratories who are working in this are establishing ground-based observations and also space-based observations. And we are working in a national level on climate change related issues. So that is the first thing. Then second is about the missions that ISRO has undertaken. We have been continuously putting satellites in the last decades on various aspects of related to measurements of atmosphere, land, ocean, and we also had collaborations with various space agencies with regard to data sharing, and we continue to provide this data through our already existing space-based observatories, and we are replacing them. Whenever they are aging, we are making sure that our next generation spacecraft is up and running, and also the instruments are of better quality. I think this is something that already been well known to the community, and we make sure that this data is shared across all the researchers so that the global climate change related research is supported by ISRO through these efforts. And we also looking at various instruments in different domains. For example, we are looking at for example, that we are looking at the radar-based observations. We also have observations specifically through our scatterometers, which are giving a very high periodicity observations, which has not been there earlier. And we are continuing to put in a series of communication and remote sensing satellite these platforms for specific observations leading to climate change research. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go on to the next question. And actually, the question comes in for you, Dr. Samanath, but I hope that I'm going to, as always, I'm going to broaden this. It says, the question was how ESRO handled the difficulties posed by the pandemic and could release 2 launches in 2020. That's a success, I think. But if I may broaden this just a bit, because Thomas Zurbuchen sort of touched on this, that space, the question is, with the pandemic raising, what is space able to contribute to that? And Thomas mentioned some efforts, that have been done in terms of, data collection and others. And I believe there are things ongoing out there that, to what extent were we good citizens of the planet and, help with the pandemic, whether it's economic, information or so forth. And so if I may make the question even broader, you're welcome to tell the world, Dr. Samanath, how it was you managed to survive the pandemic and launch. I mean, I think other countries have done that too, but apparently.
Yeah, very good. I think this pandemic was really a big challenge for us in our operations. We had a series of launches scheduled that couldn't happen. We had to postpone primarily because the way we conduct our launches, it is a pan-country activity. Various sub-assemblies comes from very different parts of the country. It has to move, which couldn't happen. Then, of course, our people going to the launch center, it has to cross our different states of the country where we had restrictions that was imposed by the COVID, and the mobility was limited. So what we did is we had to overcome such difficulties. So one of the important things that we did is we created how to launch it remotely. So we started trying to link our other launch center where it will become the control center of the launch. So that's the first thing that we did. We could create control centers away, something like 800 kilometers away, and then started doing the testing of the rocket sitting far away. And we could stage-wise and assemble and test them remotely using the staff available in the launch site itself without moving the experts there. And we reached the launch situation by very minimum people. And that was something really remarkable. And we could achieve that remote launching concept. We call it virtual launch control center. The way we meet today, same way we launched it virtually by sitting far away. That was something that we could accomplish in very short time. In 2 launches, we could do that without any hitch. And now it has become an SOP now in our operation. So we are continuing to do that way. And this year, we will have regular launches in that mode. So that is one way. But our industries, I must salute our industries in this country, which continue to work very well, even under the pandemic. And they were finding some way or the other to keep the system running. So we were not short of hardwares or systems for our launches and satellites. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thomas, you, I think, touched on the issue of activities that occurred that actually, benefited in being able to benefit the world in the sense of being able to, use space to contribute to the, knowledge of how the pandemic was impacting the economy and various other things. Am I right about that?
Yeah, you're right that the dashboard that I put into the chat earlier, eodashboard.org, I think is the URL. Basically provides data for really near real time, but also historic data of how the pandemic is really having impact, on Earth. Now, there's a number of decision makers who need and want to know that, and in various countries that basically benefit from seeing the data, such as how many planes are flying, what are the shipping lanes that are opening up, airport activity, as well as pollution and other type of Earth type parameters. I just want to point out as a side comment that, the Earth on COVID gives us new insight about our planet and its complex interconnected system than we had before. We learn about these connections in a very unusual configuration and an unusual state. So we should not miss the opportunity of learning everything we can about our planet from this situation now, as dire as the motivation may be for that difference. For example, the large reduction of carbon dioxide, one of our principal culprits of the Earth's greenhouse effect, is the emissions of that was massively reduced at 30 to 40% in many areas, or 20% in others. And so basically what that helps us do is really learn how this long-lived gas is really affecting the global distribution based on these other data that are now available. And so for us, it's really about both: be useful, but also never miss an opportunity to learn. And I think that is, as we go forward, I think that the interesting part that we're really having in front of us, and I know many other agencies look at that too, is the question whether the distribution of this virus and as it propagates forward, what are the seasonal dependencies, the temperature dependencies, humidities, and so forth. And so mapping data sets that come from global health type of environments to kind of a global environment as observed from space is a very interesting area to look at, just like it is with other life, life that of course affects also how ice melts in the polar regions, or how fires distribute organics. We also know now life from the smoke that comes up, whether it's in Australia or kind of areas in Africa, or also in the United States, so much in the western part. So I think those are really important and interesting and useful areas for investigations globally.
Good. Thank you. Gunther?
I have to unmute. Len, thank you very much. Very shortly, first I would like to say that apart from a few days in April where we lost some satellite operations because of the restrictions of COVID, all the ESA spacecraft have actually continued to operate, which was a huge relief also. So we are producing science and data, and in particular the Earth observation system that went into the dashboard. I would like to make one special example. So for instance, on this International Space Station, we are now studying a COVID-related medicine. So we are also using space in order to help medicine to overcome our biggest problem.
Thank you. Dr. Kunanaka?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm working in the space science in the JAXA, and so that from the space science division, it might be very difficult to show some of the solution to the COVID-19, but through my video message in this assembly, I have already explained you. Last month, we succeeded to retrieve the Hayabusa 2 capsule at the Australia Woomera. So in this work, JAXA and Australia Space Agency cooperatively work in this work, and we succeeded to do that. So I want to say, so from the space segment, JAXA and Australia Space Agency show our spirit and our motivation to fight against COVID-19. So that is our achievement from the space segment to the world.
Thank you very much. Carl?
Thank you, Leonard. Three things I wanted to mention. Absolutely, as Thomas mentioned, there's going to be a significant amount of learnings that we can take from the data, from the special circumstances that we've just experienced over the last year. And the data, not only climate data, people movement data, logistics, etc., all of those sorts of things. People will be studying these data sets for years to come, and the approach and the analytics, the artificial intelligence, machine learning elements that will be going over those data elements themselves will actually extract some significantly positive responses in terms of how the world can respond in terms of delivery solutions, etc., and movement solutions, and the effect on the economy, so that we can do better the next time, if there is a next time, so to speak. The second thing is, and this goes to Dr. Somernath's comments there, and that is the pandemic has also revealed new ways of working and applications of technology that we now need to adopt, that we had to adopt, and that we will continue to adopt in terms of remote operations and robotics and such like that. So the advances that are coming through there are all going to be fundamental and applied in our exploration of space in the near-term future. And then that human element, the third thing Dr. Kunanaka mentioned, it was an absolute pleasure to work with the Japanese Space Agency and NASA as well too, as in the middle of a pandemic, we were working very closely under very strict regulations and restrictions to see what we could do to help JAXA with sourcing 70 scientists, 70+ scientists, and the NASA personnel as well too, to come into the country, fully quarantined for 2 weeks at the time. But it spoke to, again, that international collaboration that this spacecraft was returning, and it had a specific date that it was coming back in. And so within all of the COVID restrictions, within all of the COVID practices and the rules and regulations through multiple government departments, including on the Japanese side, there was still that desire to collaborate and to see the success of the mission. So again, thank you, Dr. Kunanaka, for allowing us to be part of that success. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to go on to another question here, so because the clock is running and the questions are coming in, and this one is a tough one. And you may all decide that you want to put your hands over your eyes or something. It says, how are space agencies plan to mitigate? how do space agencies plan to mitigate the threat imposed by mega constellations for secured space science activities? Anybody want to try that one?
So I can start. This affects all of us. This very important problem that we have in front of us, and also an opportunity, like so often innovation is. I mean, first of all, who could say that providing internet to communities who are far away, especially during a time of isolation for so many of us, we're talking to each other because we have internet where we are. Who would say that that's a bad idea? Who would say that that is not an absolute laudable goal for so many of the companies, no matter where they are? And we're aware of companies being developed in Europe and in the United States and beyond. I mean, we're aware of these companies. Like so often, whether it's climate or whether it's low Earth orbit in this case, we have a common good. And it's absolutely critical for the international community to come together and deal with the resources that are there, in this case, low Earth orbit as a place to do amazing research and utilize for our national needs as well. And so basically what's critical, and I think what we have done is really to talk about these standards of behavior that are absolutely important to be adopting for all of these partners going forward. For what it's worth, the experience we have in the United States, we found our companies to be very strong partners. We have active dialogues in all issues, and we're learning a lot as we go forward. We have actually posted some of these initial standards. We're in discussions with our partners to go forward, and what we're observing is, of course, standard observation. I've worked in multiple countries, and it's no surprise to any of us that it tends to be that innovation kind of outperforms in speed some of the regulations that tend to fall behind. And I think what we need to do as an international community is catch up with these and make sure that at the end we achieve both goals. Goal number one, these kind of important needs, whether they're from the business side or, as I just talked to you about, from the side of fairness and perhaps even humanitarian needs, telemedicine and otherwise. These needs are being addressed from space. That's a strength. What's wrong with that? But at the same time, that we retain the utility of low Earth orbit and kind of the impacts that comes from such deployments to be in a way that we all can benefit from the resource that we have here in low Earth orbit and beyond.
Okay, thank you. Walter,
Yes, thank you. There's no question that constellation and small sats are a huge opportunity, and I'm not going into detail because the question is actually the question, how are we going to tackle the question of space traffic management? And as Thomas Subuchen just mentioned, we have to accelerate, we have to gain speed when it comes to regulation. And the question is, how do we handle the regulation? Are we going to set up some kind of regulation by a group of like-minded spacefaring nations, or are we going to put it from the first step on a broader base? And Germany, for example, was president of the European Union in the second quarter of last year, and space traffic management was put by Germany on the table that the European Union actually tackles this issue and is now discussing space traffic management on a European base. But bottom line, our target is to keep it or to lift it on the level on the United Nations. We are well aware that we have to gain speed, and Thomas is 100% right that actually the commercial path is right now moving very fast, and the regulation part is falling behind. But to make sure that we have a well accepted set of regulation, at least from our point of view, we need to lift this discussion of space traffic management on the level of the United Nations. And that's what we try to do.
Thank you very much. Gunther.
Maybe just one short remark. Also, I mean, the space debris issue is a big one. I mean, that it comes out of mega constellations, but also the overall satellite bulk. And I just want to mention that ESA has embarked as the first agency to actually actively control space debris and bring down at least one asset from space. The Adrios mission is now moving forward. And this is hopefully an example. I mean, we have to also include in these regulations that everybody who brings something up also needs to make sure that the space debris comes down again. And I hope that these international pushes for regulation will go in that direction.
Good, thank you very much. I think Jean-Claude, I think we have reached the end of the scheduled time for this. Am I correct?
Yes. You have many questions in the backlog. Up to you and the panelists if they want to go on for another few minutes.
Maybe we could answer some of them in the written form.
Yes, I don't know whether you are, some of you are already registered to the assembly, because there's also the option for view-only attendees to ask these questions by chat box on your profiles, but that may not be the case for all of you. The only thing I'm considering is the time pressure for our Australian and New Zealander colleague. It's already middle of the night. I don't know, up to you, Len.
Well, they look remarkably cheerful. And but I do think we ought to stick to the schedule here. I'll tell you what, we'll take these questions. They came in the Q&A box, so you haven't seen them. We'll distribute them to you, and then we'll find a way to put the answers out someplace. And I think that we got through, as some of them are, there's some interesting ones here. I think I'm glad for the discussion we had. I think these were important ones, and so we'll. I think we ought to probably call it a day, and unless somebody tells me you all want to go on forever.
I have to go to another meeting. I'm sorry, I need to move.
Yeah, no, I thank you very much also for a great discussion, and let's try to put it offline.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you to our audience for being with us.
Bye-bye.
See you all later.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Good night, good morning.
Okay, let me close it. Stop this. Give me 2 seconds.